Okay folks, we're about to get started, so firstly welcome to UCM Talks. It's part of University College's Isle of Man commitment to, as we say it, serve the island through excellence in education and training. So this is one of our sort of outreach initiatives, if you like. And the series gives the opportunity for our staff, our students and friends of UCM to share their research, to share their ideas, to engage people who like yourselves have come on tonight in new ways of thinking, perhaps disrupt your thinking a little bit, and to remind us all that being curious is important in life, but it's also a great joy as well. So we have a series of talks on very different subjects, and before you leave tonight, make sure you pick up the schedule for the rest of the year. Just the ordinary bit, in the unlikely event there's a fire, we go out that door and we gather on the lawn directly outside these windows here. And if you need to go to the toilet, for the ladies, just go out these doors, and as soon as you've gone down the two small stairs, it's on your left. And for the gents, a few more yards through the double doors, and it's still on your left as well. Okay. Now tonight's speaker is Professor Prof. Gabbey, although he assures me I can call him Bernard, which is a much more... I don't worry so much about saying Bernard right, but that's your middle name. Yes, Professor. Bernard is a new friend to UCM, having just retired to the island with his wife Lydia in 2017-ish, about a year. But I think the word retired is somewhat misleading because Bernard remains very active in his area of expertise and his area of passion, which is logic and computer science. And that's an expertise that is recognised right around the world. Currently, Dov is Emeritus and/or Visiting Professor or Research Fellow at King's College London, University of Luxembourg, University of Manchester, Toulouse, Agder University in Norway, and Bar-Lan and Ashkelon universities in Israel. And that's just scratching the surface of his achievements and his influence and his expertise in this area right around the world. So UCM's very lucky to have you as a new friend, and we're very lucky tonight to have the opportunity for Dov to talk about this latest initiative, Can We Replace Taxis with Robots? What lies behind that story I think is going to be absolutely fascinating. So thank you Professor Gabbey.
Thank you. I'm very honoured to be a friend of the college. And yeah, you ready? The my boss here. Okay, so the problem is basically a logic problem, and I'll explain what it is. Right? We all know that big companies want in about 4 or 5 years' time to replace all cars by driverless autonomous cars, including taxi, including your cars, and they want to make a lot of money building big fleets and leasing them to Uber and to electrical cars that will cost less, and you can just get in and we will take you by itself wherever it goes. There are lots of problems with this. You can find on the internet bicycles in Amsterdam getting in the way, jobs of people and so on. But there is also the technical question. Can we put intelligence into a robot to do the job, and what is exactly going on? And last year, January last year, I was asked to look into it. And I thought that if we look at what taxi drivers do, if we look at what taxi drivers do, this is a more contained problem. It's not a full human intelligence. You want to build a robot that behaves completely like a human. It's just the kind of problems that are on the road. So I'll start explaining what's happening, but first we have to see the difference slightly explain to you the difference between human reasoning and machine reasoning. Okay? If you're given data, let's say a list of flights, all the flights, a list of all the flights from the Isle of Man to the world. Okay? It's a very small list, that's right. And you look, as I did, I had to go to Vienna. I was Googling, I was looking for a flight where you don't have to sleep overnight. Everybody told me Dublin, Manchester, Liverpool, London. I want to go there straight. Couldn't find anything. Right? What does it mean? Usually, if you look at the data, you can't find it, then you'll say there isn't. Right? You go to Boots and say, I want vitamin D3, right? They go and look and say, we don't have it. Then they don't have it. But if you think that this is a newly employed teenager substituting in summer, maybe he didn't know how to look. So the fact that if it's not on the list, it's not there, which is a human reasoning principle, will not apply. Otherwise, it will apply. Okay? Let me give you another example. If you tell a robot, you have to tell it, calculate from all the data, right? This is, in mathematics, 2 plus 2 is 4. It doesn't matter at what context it is. It's always 4, right? But here, it depends on the context. Is the list complete? Is the data complete? Is there anything else that is relevant? You offer me ice cream, right? You offer me ice cream. I say, my wife won't like it. That's not an answer, right? But you know what I mean, because you know the context around it. Okay? I don't know if you go to Asia and say, my life, they may not understand what's going on here, right? It's a different context. So, when you put intelligence into a robot and it is a taxi driver, a robot driving a taxi, you have to study the context, and it's very difficult. To analyze it, you have to talk to taxi drivers. Okay? So I said that it's a manageable change. All right? A manageable change. Now, okay, there's stuff here that's not on the slide. Now look, let us look at example 1. That's the example of aeroplanes. Aeroplanes can be flown completely autonomous. It can take off, it can fly, it can land, right? You don't need a captain, you don't need anyone. If you want to have a captain for public relations reason, he can sleep all the way through. I mean, it doesn't matter. Okay? Now, the program is very simple because the routes are fixed from here to here. There are only a finite number of airports. They know how to land them. They know how to... The only unexpected that can happen is, for example, in 2009, there were 2 cases that I like to take as an example. One is the Hudson River case, where the captain had to take over and managed to land. In fact, another captain may have not have done it. That was a very experienced one. And in June 2009, there was a problem with a French airline. Again, some wrong reading. Some instrument froze, gave wrong reading. The computer aborted. It didn't know what to do. The pilot was asleep. The co-pilot decided, oh, it's not serious, restarted, gave it back to the computer. It all went wrong and they crashed. and 192 people died. All right? So, in one case, the computer would have done better. Well, worse than the pilot. The pilot saved the case, and in another case, it would have done better. So, you don't know. But in principle, it's programming. So, let us look, example, to the Isle of Man. Right? I mean, I've been here a year and a half. I've been taking taxis. I mean, that's another reason why I'm choosing taxis. For 10 years in London, I simply stopped driving. I've had enough. Right? You drive, you have to look here and here and here. You're nervous wreck at the end, especially if you have to pass through Swiss Cottage. It's just one big jam in there. So, taxis all the way. Now, here in the Isle of Man, I can drive. Why? It's more relaxed. There's less pressure. Small and simple. Okay? Which means I can ask myself, is it like the airlines? You know, you go to Marks and Spencer's, you get your shopping, you call Elegance. It says, if you want to go to Marks and Spencer's, press 1. If you go to 33 Howe Road, if you want a taxi to go to 33 Howe Road, that's according to my phone number, they know, press 2. And then if you want to go to the airport, that's me again, press 3. All right? Very simple. So I press the 1, the taxi comes, takes me with my shopping over there. This is airline like. I think that in the Isle of Man, you can bring a fleet of taxis. This is what the companies want to do. Do an experiment. The Isle of Man is very good at doing experiments. They have the experiments with, known for bitcoins, plastic money, online gambling, and some other stuff. All right? So we can do the experiment here. And then the taxis can move around. And in fact, I mean, people's car can also, at least Douglas can. I think this is feasible. Now, where is the problem? Where do you need intelligence? You need intelligence where you mix them together. Half people, half robots. Because then the unexpected can happen. Right? So the robot has to understand what's happening. And I asked Isle of Man taxi driver, up to the last minute, from January last year to today, taxi drivers that I asked in Israel, in London, in Germany, in Austria, in Luxembourg. I couldn't go to New York. I mean, nobody pays me for this, so it's just whenever I happen to go for a conference, I always take taxis, and so I will ask them. Right? The first one, I asked wrong. I said, the first time I did this, I said, I would like to replace you with a robot. He says, get out of here. Threw me out. So I managed it differently. I said, I don't agree with this, and I'm looking for reasons. And then they started talking, right? Showing me examples. And this is what I wrote. I collected it. There are, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so in the case of intelligence, there is the social aspect. A lot of them talked about we'll be out of jobs, right? But that has nothing to do with the technical possibility of doing it. It's the social effect. I mean, that's something else. Also have to be considered, but not the logic part. Can we do it? Maybe we will not do it because the politics and the jobs and so on will not work. The machine ethics is something else. What do you tell the taxi driver? Here, it is a machine. Here I am sitting with a machine. All right? It's driving. There's one person over there crossing, and he says, nobody likes me, including, all right? You don't mind if he's dead, right? Or two of them, okay? And then there is how many of us? One. The machine doesn't care. It has no instinct of self-preservation. So, am I going to sit with a guy like this? No. Another thing, you drive. Here we are, and there is a fellow lying on the side of the road. Right? I want to stop and ask, are you all right? Certainly, the Isle of Man don't do it. In London, I'm not sure. All right? The robot, he's got a goal. He's got to go to the address. He's not going to stop. And if I tell him to stop, well, it's not so simple. There are competitions of robotics recognizing in a disaster area which one is just a homeless sleeping and which one is actually injured. Right? That's in itself a problem. Right? A driver from Telecab yesterday took me from the hospital to home, and he said he's been driving for 30 years. At the back of the car, sometimes the passenger is asleep, sometimes is sick. Can the robot know what to do? All of this has to be programmed if you want to properly function, right? And then he said, well, in the old days I could shake the person and wake him up, but now you can't touch them. I mean, you have, right? But again, how will he recognize what the problem is? Yeah?
The same with the trolley problem.
The trolley problem.
If there are 5 people in one road and 1 in the other road, the computer has to work out which one has to run over the 5 other one.
Yeah.
This is debatable because who's going to program that? Who's liable if someone gets
That's right. It's cultural sensitive on the program. Right?
There was an MIT study recently where they looked at life values all over the world. Right? To try and come up with a crowdsourced way of doing that.
It's certain cultures, some people are less valuable.
Yeah, it has some quirky things like a dog is worth more than an animal.
Or a cat.
Yeah.
So that's the machine ethic, and this is what the university community is dealing with. They also asked me to do that because I worked on norms and so on, and I'll tell you at the end what I think how it should be, in my opinion, at the moment, right? Helping passengers, I said. The business aspects, I mean, they want to make money. Whether they can make money or not, I don't know. Because one taxi driver in Israel, that was very interesting. He made a point. I mean, sometimes I think that the taxi driver are smarter than me with all the things that they are saying. He said the following: airlines, the communication is very good. It has to be safe. It should not fail. If you have a computer or a Wi-Fi or a telephone, it's not. They don't invest that much in it. Yeah, you know, if it doesn't work, you try again. My phone does all kind of stupid things. The Wi-Fi fails. At home, I have 2 Wi-Fis from 2 different companies, Manx and Shaw. In London, I had 3. Just to make sure at least one works. I've got 2 telephones here because I don't trust one. All right? So if you rely on the road, these autonomous cars, they communicate. They have to communicate, and it's important because I mean, think of Swiss Cottage. Swiss Cottage is a big roundabout with lots of cars. In order to go through is a nightmare, and you have to edge like this with your car, and if you're not careful you bump into somebody, and then I don't know what happens. So I used to take the kids every day 7 o'clock in the morning to school through Swiss Cottage, coming back at 5 o'clock or later, and it's always, my fear was Swiss Cottage. But a human can do it. A robot, if they're all robots, perfect. It's just a program. You send a signal, the program will tell you move, you move, you move, you move, no problem at all, and I suppose they could do it very fast as well. All right, so you say, wonderful. But it relies on communication. Communication has to be the best, military, Air Force style. Are you willing to invest? I don't know. Because if there's a failure, I mean, there are all kinds of plans. In Holland, they want to have trucks. One trucks with a human and a whole lot of trucks behind, you know. But if it costs, without the right communication, reliable communication, it won't work. So I don't know. Businesses probably they'll do a bit of politics. We're relying on it. We want to, together with Gabbey, who is the director of higher education here, and possibly some university contacts from Europe and London, we'll try and do a project, invite them to come here. I mean, it's ideal for experiments. It won't put the taxi driver out of a job. Don't worry. I mean, you just become. Someone has to run it, and there are lots of experienced drivers here from background in engineering and so on. It will be all right. And whenever something is a hot topic, you can get the money, yeah?
The data has already been applied, isn't it? They're using Uber at the moment in different cities. Now that data has already been.
Yes, I mean, yeah.
I mean, the drivers think they're out making a living. They're actually just gaining data for the next cars to come on.
Yeah, they're working on it, yes. The thing is, I am sure it will happen. In fact, I mean, if you ask me personally, you don't need people. I told my wife, I am retired. Don't worry about it. I am retired. My pension comes automatically into the bank account. I mean, we can she can have the food delivered. If I die, I said, get a freezer. Don't tell anyone. Put me in there. Life can go on. Yeah. Who needs me? It's all programs. Yeah.
Uber bought 24,000 new Volvos off the state-of-the-art next ones. 24,000 cars, driverless. 2,000 trucks too. They're taking over the trucking industry in America this year. There's a study done.
Yeah, it's going in 4 or 5 years.
There's $2.8 billion dollars spent on trucking.
but I think Uber is again like airlines. You call, they know where you are, they send you the car, right? But if you have people driving privately on the road, things can happen.
Yeah.
There was one taxi driver in Israel. Well, 2 taxi drivers told me they like the machines. One in Israel, because in Israel they have a plague in a way. Teenagers with those bicycles with batteries, which is really a motorcycle, but it's not covered by law. So every 13-year-old can get one. And that taxi driver said they sort of come in front of me, and I can't react. But if I were a robot, I would react and stop all the other robots. Okay, so he thought it was good. And then another taxi driver in the Isle of Man told me, let the robots drivers drive robots, messengers, and leave us alone. You know, they can deal with themselves. But at least he accepted them. All the others said, oh, they can't do the job. I mean, it's no good. All kinds of reasons which they demonstrated. So let me see. Oh, okay. Here is some examples. One was reading the body language of other cars, which was very interesting. We were waiting at the lights. There was a car in front. We were car number 2. And he said, this guy is going to turn against the lights to the right. I said, I don't believe you. And Lo and behold, he did it. So I said, how did you know? He said, it's the body language, the way he was ready to dart through. Next thing, we were driving behind a van. He looked at it and he said, look, this guy is speaking on the phone. So, no, I don't believe you. He overtook, I looked, it was on the phone. So I said, how did you know? He was wobbling a bit. Okay? Swiss Cottage Junction, I told you. Help passengers, of course, you know, if you help someone with the shopping, help this, help that, you can't do this. I don't think that's a reason. I tell you why. When you introduce new technology, I think this is a point to think about. When you introduce new technology, we as humans can also adapt. So,
people with walking disabilities, you have a particular distance
so,
from the car that you're liable for that person.
yeah, so you have to change the rules a bit, change either it will work or not, but people have to adapt. You sit, chat with the passenger. I mean, this is one woman taxi driver. They're all men, but I chanced to have one woman in London and one woman here, and they both talk about having good conversation with the driver. Yeah, the men driver didn't mention this, although we always talked. I mean, I took a lot of taxis in Glasgow, and they always talked about independence, and I said, change your clock, and that, you know, but those two cases talk about chatting. One of them were also worried about being kidnapped. You go into an autonomous car, then you booked it, then somebody might hack into it and kidnap you. And indeed, well, I thought maybe, I'm not sure, maybe she's a bit...
Or use them as weapons.
Yeah. He's also a taxi driver. They are smart. I'll tell you something about taxi drivers. One of my colleagues was investigating why is it that some people live to 100 and other people live only to 60 or 70. Is it because they smoke? Is it because, I mean, what is it? And it's the optimistic view and being challenged. Challenged means that your life is interesting, that you're doing things. Don't retire and watch television, or just do something. And taxi drivers are a prime example of that, because they're challenged all the time. Right?
Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
Passion.
Yeah, so they'll probably live 5 to 10 years longer than otherwise. Also, professors. I mean, this is also true. So,
good.
Okay. And indeed, I was told, you told me, that the European community recently banned those phones where parents can track their children because pedophiles can log in and know where they are. You're not allowed to sell them. So actually this is a possible world.
The bit about the hackers is interesting because I used to work where I had 7 staff, lecturers, that were maritime lecturers, and every single one of them had been kidnapped by pirates. And it's because and mostly in Nigeria and around that area, and it's because they would hack into the computer systems on the ships, on vessels, which is the sat-nav, in the dynamic positioning, and they would steer the vessel into an area where they could then surround it and board it. So, you know, things like that are quite prevalent. But, you know, I hadn't ever thought of it for cars.
I think they have better security, I think.
You can be kidnapped, you can be legally kidnapped.
Legally kidnapped.
Yeah.
Oxymoron.
And then that's several taxi drivers, they complained about this. corrupt youth, wrong idea of human relationships. But this sex with robot I put in, also in connection with what's happened to our society. I'll tell you this story. There is I think 2 years ago, some, I don't know, real professors or not, they wanted to have a conference. They wanted to have a conference and they refused, and then they found one university to have a conference on that, which is completely crazy. Okay, there are also general consideration. Can we afford the transition period? You know, I mean, sometimes you don't move house because you can't have the hassle of moving house. Even the other house is better than what you have now. You know, there may be a lot of problems and then you don't want to go into it. That's all the deal, Rob, I told you. They are safer and more reliable. Like you wouldn't have a pile-up because they'll communicate among themselves. They'll come on time. They sometimes in certain cultures, you know, where you have a taxi, you wait until you fill it's a sort of service. I don't know what they call it. Let's say you want to go from here to another town, from London to Manchester. And then you say £10 if the taxi is full. Each one pays £10, so, but only if it's full. If not, they might tell you to go. It's not worthwhile, not enough people. So they can refuse. It happened to me many times because I live in North London. We want to take a taxi at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the evening. You stop one of those black ones. Where are you going? North London. No, I don't want to take you. I mean, it's out of my way. A robot will not refuse. If it's within its remit, it will take you.
Not here.
You can be refused here as well.
If you stop and question the customer, you must be able to take them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, how can I trust my life to a robot? Robots are biased. I mentioned that. We will be further controlled by the authorities. That's Lydia's idea, which is quite right. You see, Google, Microsoft, Facebook, I am already controlled by them. I'm not on Facebook, but Google does control me. I made a mistake 2 years ago where Google, I used the browser. I needed to use the browser. I think I was at Luxembourg preparing some lecture. I needed to use the browser. Suddenly the browser stopped and said, we would like you to agree that we send you tailored adverts. And I didn't answer. And then it came again. This time it says, we'll send you adverts anyway. It may as well be tailored to your needs. I got very angry because this is like you know, blackmail, yeah. And I refused it. The third time it suddenly stopped, no Google. So I was stuck. And I rebooted, and then next time I said yes. But if you look at some Italian food once, you suddenly get all the adverts about Italian food. So you have to be very careful not to look at something simply because you're curious. It limits. Amazon took some money from me, just like that. I mean, that was last week. Yeah. They had my credit card, right? At least I could call someone to overrule it. They apologized, I don't know what happened, and computers do what they want, because after all, I'll tell you something, mathematics is very, very precise. And there are books, counter-examples in mathematics. If you have crazy counter-examples in math, what do you expect from programs? You know, it's okay, next. That's a good story. About 15 years ago, Professor Ray Reiter from the University of Toronto, who's very famous in reasoning, and worked with me, invited me to go and see his robot. He had a robot about this height, looks like R2-D2, which could go around corners in the corridors and so on, deliver coffee. So you sort of click and it comes and gives you your coffee. And you know, it had a camera like that. You know, and moved around. Okay? I said, I can't travel to Toronto, I'm sorry, it's too far, I can't sit in an aeroplane for such a long time and so on. He came back again and said, come, I want you to sponsor this, come. And then he said, I'll pay for your ticket, I'll pay for your wife's ticket, you can stay in a hotel for a week, I'll pay for everything, just come. She said, let's go. We went. All right, it was the beginning of the week. The meeting at his lab was on Tuesday. I went with Lydia on Tuesday. He wasn't there. He thought it was Wednesday. But his group was ready. They were ready. So they prepared the demonstration. They showed me, you know, how it's everything. You know, there was the R2-D2 on the camera and everything. And someone ordered coffee, and the robot was coming. And Lydia said, I'll be the obstacle. So she stood like this, in the middle. You want to show them? No. Okay. And the R2-D2 was coming like that. This is her. Of course, he came too near. The camera was right next to her bosom. So she moved backwards. She moved backwards. And the computer crashed. Completely. It took them 6 months to fix it. So whenever she came with me to a conference, she said, this is my magnetic personality that froze its, fried its circuits. I don't mind about, I mean, I know what that means, but not the robot, I don't think. So what happened there? Okay? I think I know, although he never told me. It's how he wrote the program. And that's another thing. All of this, whatever we taught, is also how you write the program. It's not that the job is done, because probably the program said, you go. When you hit an obstacle, calculate, go round it. Okay? She moved backwards. Where's the obstacle? Didn't know what to do. But, okay, so the next question, what do we do? Here is an obstacle. This is the obstacle. Do I walk like this? No. What I will do, that's an obstacle. Okay, I'll walk this way. Right? That's a normal thing. Maybe like that. Maybe if I don't like it, maybe like that. Right? I just not do the program up to where I can't do anymore and then go around. But if I walk this way, it doesn't matter, let it move, who cares, I'm walking. Right? So this means even when you program the thing, it has to be done in a way that we program ourselves, so that it will be human-like without any problems. This is very difficult, because you have to think, why? How do I, right? I mean, you were talking before about language, right? Take a ticket. In English, if you have a ticket and you plug it in, and you move on, right? In the underground. What do? Do you validate the ticket or you cancel the ticket? In French, you validate the ticket. Well, I think in English or German, you cancel the ticket. It's how you view it, right? So it's how you view what's happening is part of how you program it, because otherwise, I mean, there'll be misunderstandings.
I think it's possibly more than that, though, because in that case, the obstacle moved. It
Yeah.
wasn't a flaw in the programming. It was an unexpected case that there was no programming for.
Yeah,
If you know what I mean. So, as a developer, you could think of what are the different things that happen.
yeah, that's right.
But if a system's not designed to cope with not having a way to resolve a particular issue, it's always going to
Yeah.
freeze in some way.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually what we're doing. That's why we're interviewing the taxi drivers, seeing what kind of things can happen, and seeing whether we can anticipate all the possibilities. And this is the experiment, perhaps, that we will try to do. Hopefully, get some money for the Isle of Man, because then you let them run a bit. Maybe bring some bikers to solve the thing for the Netherlands. Let them move around after what is it? The Grand.
TC.
Yeah, and see. I mean, this is one way of finding out what happens. You let it run. You learn the hard way, but in a controlled situation. I don't know. Let me tell you what kind of logic I would put into it from what I've seen. Right? Let me explain. What happens if you have a problem with your computer? If you can't solve it, it loops or something, you reboot. In other words, you go back to initial position. Reboot. So maybe the logic, whenever something is, make it very simple. Whenever something is wrong, reboot. Don't go to the initial position all the time. This is the simplest way, right? I mean, you have, take a drunken driving, right? You could say anybody when tested having more alcohol in the blood than a certain amount, cancel the license. This is reboot. Go back to the initial position where you didn't have a license. Don't say you get points or you pay fine. Nothing. You're more than this. Reboot. Right? Religion could be like this. You come home, you find your wife in the arms of someone else. Don't think what will happen with the children. I didn't speak with her enough. Divorce. Finish. Right? Automatic. That's reboot. Right? So here maybe you adopt this point of view to keep it very simple. Reboot means stop and park somewhere. Maybe, I mean, people get frustrated, but that's the initial kind of programming. Yeah. So I'm thinking in those terms.
It still has to be contextual, because in that case, the reboot is going to go back and pick you up again.
Yes, yeah. GPS does it, right? I mean, that some GPS, if you ignore them, it will drive you back 20 miles to go to the same junction that you missed.
Yeah.
Some of them do that.
That's why I say it needs to be contextual.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe
Yeah,
figure out how we get a point in time that we can reboot to, and then
yeah,
figure it out from there again. Because you don't go back and
yeah.
2 meters away from the destination, you're going to try to 3 miles back to reboot.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go back to a last known good.
It's got nothing to do with it, so yeah.
The thing is, I mean, suppose you make, think of an airline, suppose you put a bit more intelligence into the program. Then it will start disagreeing with the pilot, and there you can't reboot. You know, you can't just stop the program. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
On the other hand, they don't hold grudges. So There's lots of people I won't take in my taxi due to experience.
Okay, let's see if I reach the end. Probably I did. Okay, discussion. We've done it through. That's it. Thank you very much.
You've got one more slide there, haven't you? Sorry.
Yeah, I think
Really
we
well.
did it almost exactly. Right.
So you're open to questions and challenges
Yeah.
from the floor, although we've been doing that already. But anyone else want to?
I suppose one way to solve all the problems or the assumptions we're always making is that it's a single computer driving a single robot. But if you allow a single robot to have multiple working at the same time, so let's say one domain, one segment, figure out what it needs to do, and then the other two are figuring out what is the objection scenario that might occur and how do we course correct for those, and put it in such a way that they can context switch between them. And that way we have a system that's having life experiences as it goes along, figures out what the scenarios might be possible. But if we leave a single brain to a single mechanical object, then we have a problem that we need to try to figure out how we stop and understand things. So we give you context, like we were saying before, with all the cars in what that big traffic circle that it's a nightmare. They talk to one another and send signals out to one another, do the same thing, but inside of its single context or single
Yeah.
unit. That might be a better approach to trying to figure out.
Well,
Experience, of course, is a problem, but that's somebody else's problem too.
Yeah. I was thinking of maybe taking elegance and telecab and replacing the fleets, or maybe just elegance and replacing the fleet and seeing what happens.
I'm sure they might have an objection to that.
No,
It's a
they
very
won't
loose
lose their
methodology,
jobs
isn't it?
because
Elegance has got the far superior computer model.
yeah, because
We have the app as well, also, which is collecting data.
yeah.
They won't lose their
So
jobs.
I mean, you'll probably make money out of it and have
Still need licenses.
everybody gets a raise just to do the
I probably
experiment.
stay at home and just let my car go.
Yeah,
You get a lifetime on the lecture circuit explaining to people how to lead with the disruption. Actually,
Yeah.
the people who go through it first get paid a lot of money to tell everyone else how to deal with it.
yeah.
The past 5 years, taxi drivers paid for my uni fees. How concerned are you that these jobs will be taken from people who want to do graduate courses, postdoc courses? A lot of people work as taxi drivers and other jobs will sort of not just driving jobs. How concerned are you about the ethical?
I don't know what to say because this same questions about what happened to jobs. As always, whenever something new comes, you have this problem, and the standard answer that there'll be new jobs created because of the new technology. But I don't believe that either. I mean, it's not as simple as that.
Blue collar jobs and white collar.
So I don't know what to say. The only thing I'm sure about, it's the big companies that are in control. They, if you forgive me saying so, they worship the dollar, nothing else. And that will drive them to force it. There's nothing we can do.
We've got an expert in America only.
I didn't go. I should have gone to New York and Italy.
We've got an estimate of 3.1 million jobs in America.
The reality is that the jobs will be affected. Will always happen in any disruption. Like in the old days when we switched from horses, not we, but somebody at some point in time switched from horses to cars. The people that used to clean the streets from the horse manure lost their jobs because they weren't the horses anymore. But they have to adjust. The human nature is such that we have to evolve with whatever the environment puts before us. So yes, there'll be a disruption at this point right now, but we've got to look beyond that. But if we're looking at what's going to happen if everybody loses their jobs now, every single taxi driver loses their job now, we're not going to be able to conquer from it as a race. And then
But the projects in the past who started making for Microsoft and stuff, people started building the computers. Now you've got the computers who are going to build the computers.
Yeah. So I'm
There won't be any.
I have a software company, and we like everyone's the same, right? People are writing software that makes it easier for
until we come to the point where they're writing their own software.
Yeah, no, but even if you take, say, web application in the old days, not old days, but 5 years maybe, you had to have somebody who was really, really skilled at creating a website to put that together for you.
Sure.
But now you can, 7-year-old can pick up something.
2017 study in Germany reckon not just driving jobs, but every other job, just selling jobs in shops. 18 million jobs.
No, it's a
Over a decade.
The Bank of England Oxford University study also has each job category for the Bank of England's propensity to be in place.
There's no doubt that jobs will be affected, and the same way like in the banking industry,
Yeah,
for example,
I don't know.
I don't know.
Retail,
Actually, a lot of white-collar jobs are super susceptible to being replaced.
Does anyone mind if I talk about stocking knitters?
Go for it.
There was a man in Britain who noticed his wife and daughter, and you saw they spent all night, all evening sitting by the fire knitting stockings. This was in the 16th century, this is the early 17th. And he thought, no, I can do better than that. And he invented a machine that knitted in a circle, so you could make tubes, you could knit stockings. And he took, at that time, you couldn't start a business on your own, that sort of thing. He took his invention to Queen Elizabeth I. And he demonstrated this stocking knitting machine. And she looked at it and she said, well, it's very nice, but that's going to do all the stocking knitters out of a job. So tough cookies, mate, you're not marketing that here. So we went to Holland, which became the world's centre for stockings. And all the stocking knitters were out of a job anyway, ultimately. And whenever I hear people discussing about, machines doing people out of a job, you can't hold back the tide. You've just got to find some way to swim with it.
Being first is actually good.
Being the first is probably the best
Are
thing.
you comfortable with calling it artificial intelligence?
The name stuck. Lots of people are uncomfortable, are not comfortable with it. But that's, stuck. It started like this, and that's it.
Just curious.
It's not artificial. I see my job. Let me tell you a secret. In the past 60 years, I was working in logic. Developing various aspects of logic in many areas, and I started journals and handbooks and encyclopedias, as well as writing my own books and so on. What I believe is when the Almighty created man, he had a big lump of logic. That's what I tell my students. And he sprinkled it around. And my job is to look what's going on in the heads of people and try and construct the original, see what the original lump is. Now, for those of you who don't believe in creation in this way, I'll say two things. One, you're heading for a big surprise. But the second is, it implies a working assumption that there is coherence in this. However differences there are, they still have some coherence, and this is an approach for the possibility of modeling it. People think like this about the weather. It's crazy, but still they feel that there's something tomorrow. So take that as a working assumption, and this is the outcome of it. The rest is, we'll see.
Dorothy, did you have a question?
Well, yes, I had both a question and an observation, if I may.
Yeah.
The question relates to the experiment, as I understand it, which is going to be carried out in man in relation to these autonomous vehicles. And you've emphasised throughout the commercial drivers which motivate these companies in developing these projects. And my concern in relation to this is that the Isle of Man has not always been good in securing its own position. And what would be awful would be if we were to be used as the test bed, but to gain no benefit from it later on. So, for example, we found that everybody found it was a wonderful thing, and it was adopted, as we were saying, in London, Paris, New York, but not in Laxey, because the companies decided that actually the Isle of Man was too small to benefit from the operation later on.
And most likely will do that because they're out to make money, and it's the job of our politicians to deal with it.
Well, it's the job of the politicians to make sure that it gets enough benefit in the early stages to compensate for any losses or disbenefit later on. And the second point is that you have not yet talked about any legal implications arising out of the introduction of these vehicles. Is this something that you'd be giving consideration to?
Liability.
Principally, yes.
The question arose here and there. It's very difficult. I don't know.
Initially, you're going to need licenses.
That's where we're going to get all those extra jobs.
Yes.
In the government.
It's complex, yes?
Yes, it is.
I mean, I know that in Israel, for example, where you have all these kids putting a battery in a bicycle, and people get killed. They do all kinds of things, and they have to change the law, and it's very slow.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you a tip, my opinion. People think society is going to be taken over by robots. It's not the robots like the Terminator and this guy. No, it's the bureaucracies. Bureaucracies are one big robot. They are taking over. You can't. Yeah?
On that note, we might do one more.
Contrarian point of view, you said that Swiss Cottage, they would all drive perfectly well if there were no humans drivers on the road. Could we take a radical approach and ban human driving on the Isle of Man? Would that solve the problem? Would we need anywhere near as much logic if there were just no human drivers?
I mean, it's possible. It's possible.
Am I right in thinking that today you could make it work if there were just no humans?
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's possible, but you may not like it as a solution.
I suspect I won't get very far.
In mathematics, the simplest set is the empty set. Have nothing, got no problems. I saw on television many years ago, they brought some Indian guy who was sitting on a bed of nails. He landed in New York, and he was asked, tell us what happiness is. And he said this, yes, what have you got? And as the guy was telling him what he got, he was doing this, he said, you're thus far from happiness. So if you have nothing, you're happy. You know, the lowest fixed point of anything.
I don't want to thwart conversation. I'm sure Dov will hang around afterwards, but we've come to the end of the time allocated, so if people need to go, we need to finish. But you can stay. Okay, we won't get kicked out for a little while yet, but I think it's just because it is 7 o'clock. This is a man who I think has got a lot of ideas and an awful lot more stories to tell in different capacities. So thank you for sharing what you've shared and stirring up what we all have to face every day. Is that there is what technology can do, is what we want it to do, and are willing to let it do. And those are the big decisions that are, as you say, occurring right across life. The prospect of a life not having to go to work, I suspect, is one we should look at as well. That wouldn't be so bad. A different way to live human life, which is something we haven't done for centuries. So there's all sorts of challenges.
People doing that now, they call them nomads.
Yes, in their camper vans. Yeah. So please stay. The idea of these talks is to stimulate, to engage, to make you go home on your drive tonight, not obviously with your hands on your own wheel, doing it yourself, but perhaps thinking about things differently or having all sorts of new ideas. Our next talk, just as a commercial, is quite a different subject. It's the evolution of contagious kindness. It was an intriguing title, and just to give it a bit of a push, this is a young woman who's doing a PhD. She lives in Port Erin. UCM are providing a bit of support by we provided her with students to do some tests on, and she's coming up with some very interesting results about the evolutionary nature of altruism. And
This is the young lady who gives out chocolate.
She does. which makes us all feel very altruistic and be willing to do the test of yes, bring that there. But it's just an example of the breadth that we're trying to cover in this UCM talk series. And I just wanted to make a point. UCM is very committed to generating more research, both as an educational institution, but also because this island, you know, is small enough. We can become a learning island. We can become informed. We're a bit off doing anything as ambitious as replacing the taxis just yet, but we are keen to do more research and
you're going to need a big computer to deal with the scenarios that I deal with.
I bet you. I bet the supercomputer that or something. But having friends like Professor Gabbey help us on our way towards that ambition. So please don't go unless if you want to keep talking. But that just perhaps in the time-honoured way, just thank Professor Gabbey for his talk tonight.